Karen started yelling at my daughter, screaming that she had broken HOA rules and disrespected her authority. Her voice was full of anger as she stepped closer and kept shouting in my daughter's face. Then, in her rage, Karen pulled out a shotgun and pointed directly toward my daughter. My daughter froze in fear, her eyes wide, her body shaking. "Please, no," she cried. Karen didn't care. She fired the shotgun at my daughter. The loud blast echoed through the whole street. The moment the gunshot went off, my daughter screamed in terror. "Dad, help me! Dad, please save me!" The second I heard her scream, I ran toward her as fast as I could, my heart pounding, fear turning into pure fire inside me. Karen kept laughing, acting like she had done nothing wrong, completely unaware of the truth. She didn't know that the girl she just aimed a gun at was the police chief's daughter. Before you hear what happened next, tell me where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for more real HOA stories where justice always wins. I heard the scream before I saw the gun. It was the kind of scream that cuts straight through everything, through walls, through noise, through the air itself. I was in the kitchen making coffee when it happened, and the mug nearly slipped from my hand. My daughter never screamed like that, not once in her entire life. It was the sound of fear, shock, and helplessness all at once, and it hit me like lightning. I rushed toward the front door, my heart pounding in my chest. When I stepped outside, the world seemed to slow down. The morning sunlight was soft, the wind was gentle, and the neighborhood looked calm, except for the one scene unfolding in my yard that shattered every piece of safety I thought existed. My daughter stood in the grass, holding her backpack close to her chest. She was waiting for her school ride like she always did. Her hair was braided neatly, her shoes tied perfectly, everything about her small and innocent. But now she was shaking, her eyes wide with terror, her shoulders trembling so badly she could barely stand. And standing in front of her, just a few feet away, was HOA Karen. Karen, in her bright red dress, heels sharp against the pavement, face twisted with frustration. She was marching toward my daughter like she was confronting a criminal. Her voice was already raised before I even reached them. "You're breaking neighborhood rules again," she shouted, pointing aggressively with one hand while holding something long and black in the other. My daughter stepped backward. "I'm just waiting for the bus," she whispered, confused, trying to understand why an adult was shouting at her so violently. But Karen didn't want explanations. Karen didn't want the truth. She wanted power. She took another step toward my daughter, and in a sudden, terrifying motion, she lifted the object in her hands, a shotgun. She held it like some twisted tool of authority, pointing it upward at first, then lowering it just enough to scare. "No child disrespects my community," she screamed, her voice trembling with anger. My daughter froze completely. She didn't blink, didn't breathe, didn't move. Small tears started rolling down her face as her voice cracked into a broken plea. "Please, please don't hurt me." That was the moment something inside me snapped. I didn't think, I didn't breathe, I just ran. I sprinted across the yard, my feet barely touching the ground, my entire body fueled by fear and pure instinct. My daughter's scream echoed in my mind as I raced toward her, arms pumping, adrenaline burning through my veins. Karen didn't even notice me yet. She was too focused on towering over a terrified child, too lost in her delusion of authority to understand the danger she was creating. Her face remained twisted, convinced she was the hero of her own story, fighting imaginary rule breakers. But she was wrong. She was out of control. She was the threat. And she didn't know one thing. She had chosen the wrong family. She had chosen the wrong child, the girl she was screaming at, the girl she had just threatened with a shotgun. The girl crying and shaking in fear was the police chief's daughter, and the police chief was already running toward her. I closed the distance quickly, my thoughts racing faster than my footsteps. I didn't care what Karen claimed she saw. I didn't care what rule she thought was broken. Nothing justified pointing a weapon at a child. Nothing justified terrorizing someone who wasn't even old enough to understand half the rules she was yelling about. As I came closer, my daughter saw me. Relief flooded her eyes instantly, but the fear didn't disappear. She reached one shaking hand toward me, hoping I would get there fast enough. "I'm here!" I yelled. "I'm coming!" Karen finally noticed movement in her peripheral vision. She looked at me with irritation, as if I was the inconvenience. She didn't lower the shotgun. She didn't apologize. She didn't step back. Instead, she shouted, You need to control her. She thinks she can break my rules. But I didn't slow down. I didn't respond. I didn't let anything distract me. My only focus was my daughter. My only mission was reaching her. My only thought was stopping Karen before things got even worse. And with every step I took, one truth burned brighter inside me. Karen had crossed a line. She had no idea who she was dealing with, and in the next moments, she was going to learn exactly who I was. I sprinted across the grass, my breath sharp and fast, my heart pounding so loudly it felt like the whole neighborhood should be able to hear it. My feet barely touched the ground as I raced toward my daughter, who stood frozen like a small statue made of fear. Her eyes were wide, her hands shaking violently, her backpack lying on the ground beside her where she must have dropped it during the shock. Karen stood less than a few feet away from her, gripping the shotgun tightly in both hands. Her face was red with rage, her eyes wild with a twisted sense of authority she believed she had. The barrel of the shotgun trembled slightly, not because Karen was scared, but because she was too angry to control her movements. It was terrifying to watch. "You people think you can ignore the HOA," she screeched, her voice cracking through the air. "This is my neighborhood. Karen," I yelled again as I got closer, "put the gun down." But she didn't. She didn't even think about lowering it. Instead, she turned her head toward me with a look of annoyance, like I was interrupting something important. Her grip tightened as she faced my daughter again. "This brat thought she could play music outside," Karen shouted. "She thinks she's special." "She's a child," I yelled back. "And she hasn't done anything wrong." My daughter couldn't even speak. She stood there crying silently, hugging herself, her tears running in thin streaks down her cheeks. Her shoes were planted in the grass, but her knees were shaking so badly that I thought she might fall at any moment. The fear in her eyes cut through me deeper than anything else ever could. Karen took another step toward her. The shotgun's barrel lowered slightly, not pointed directly but still far too close, far too dangerous, far too threatening. I stopped a few feet away from them, keeping my voice steady so I didn't escalate her panic. "Karen," I said firmly, "if you touch her, you will regret it." Karen laughed, a short, cold, mocking laugh that sent a chill down my spine. "Oh, really?" she said. "What will you do, write a complaint? Cry to the HOA board?" She really had no idea. Her arrogance was so complete that she didn't even imagine I could be anything more than another scared parent, another person she could bully, another powerless neighbor beneath her authority. She didn't know my job. She didn't know my history. She didn't know my daughter was the worst person she could have chosen. Still holding the shotgun, Karen waved it slightly toward the street as if directing traffic. "I told her yesterday," Karen said smugly. "No standing outside before 8 a.m., no noise, no waiting for buses on the grass, no backpacks on the driveway. And she still ignores it." "She's going to school," I said. "She has every right to stand here." "No, she doesn't," Karen yelled. "Not without HOA permission." I didn't even respond to that. There was no response for something so insane. What mattered was getting my daughter away from the danger. I lifted one hand slowly, palm open, signaling to my daughter that she should stay still. Then I shifted slightly so I was between her and the gun. Karen noticed immediately. "Don't move closer," she shouted. "I will defend myself if I have to." "Defend yourself?" I said, my voice sharpening. "She's a child." "You're the one threatening her." Karen scowled and held the shotgun tighter. "She needs discipline," she snapped. "No one learns anything if they aren't scared a little." Those words made me furious in a way I could hardly describe. Scaring children was her idea of leadership. Threatening them with weapons was her idea of order. I took another slow step forward. "Karen," I said quietly, "you need to listen very carefully." She blinked, confused. "And why would I do that?" "Because," I said, "you're about to cross a line you can't come back from." Karen rolled her eyes dramatically. "You're so overdramatic. It's a gun for protection. I wasn't going to use it unless she forced me." "She's 14, I said. "She forced nothing." Karen kept ranting. "She's always outside. She plays music. She walks too loud. She looks at me like she doesn't respect me. My daughter is scared of you," I said. "She's scared because you act like this." Karen's face twisted. "Good. Maybe fear will teach her to follow the rules." My jaw clenched so tight I felt my teeth ache. "You think fear is power," I said. It's not, it's sickness. Karen didn't like that. She stepped toward me, pointing the shotgun closer, still angled downward but threatening all the same. You think you know everything because you're her father? She sneered. You think you can tell me how this neighborhood should run? I'm not telling you, I said. I'm warning you. Karen scoffed again. Warn me of what? I looked her straight in the eyes. You have no idea who you're threatening. She laughed again, shaking her head. Oh, please. You're nobody. Just another neighbor who doesn't follow rules. You really think that? I asked softly. I know it, she said proudly, and that was the moment I realized she still didn't understand. She still didn't know. So I reached slowly into my back pocket, not to scare her but to show her the truth she should have known before raising a weapon at a child. Karen, I said, you're making a mistake. I don't make mistakes, she barked, but she just had, and the next few seconds were going to change everything. Karen stared at me, her face twisted between anger and confusion, the shotgun still trembling in her hands. My daughter stood behind me now, gripping the back of my shirt, crying softly. I could feel her shaking through the fabric. Every breath she took was a shaky, frightened gasp. Seeing her like that made something inside me harden. I stepped forward slowly, placing myself squarely between my daughter and the weapon. Karen's eyes flicked to the movement, and for a moment she hesitated, but her pride forced her to raise her chin again. Karen, I said, voice controlled, put the gun down. This is your last warning. Karen laughed, loudly, sharply, cruelly. You don't get to warn me, she snapped. I am the HOA president. I make the rules, and your daughter broke them. She was waiting for a bus, I said, keeping my voice even. That's not a rule. That's just life. Karen's smirk flickered, but she forced it back onto her face. She was on the grass, Karen argued. She was too close to the driveway. She was making noise. She was disrespecting the community. She wasn't doing anything wrong, I replied. You're reacting out of anger, not logic. Karen's grip tightened so aggressively that her knuckles turned pale. You think I'm scared of you? She said. You're just another useless neighbor who doesn't listen. I took a deep, slow breath. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to protect my daughter. Karen scoffed. Oh, please. I don't care who she belongs to. She broke my rules, and in this neighborhood I decide what happens. You don't, I said calmly. You never did. Karen's eyebrows shot up, and her expression shifted sharply. And what's that supposed to mean? Without another word, I reached into my pocket. Not sudden, not quick, not violent. Slowly, deliberately. Karen's eyes narrowed suspiciously. What are you doing? She shouted. Don't you dare reach for a weapon. I'm not, I said. I pulled something out and held it up so the morning sun reflected off the golden surface. My badge. The emblem caught the sunlight, sending a bright flash across Karen's face. Her expression shattered instantly. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. She blinked repeatedly as if her brain refused to process what her eyes were seeing. You're... Her voice cracked. A police officer? No, I said. I'm the police chief. The shotgun dipped just an inch as Karen's arm weakened. Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you tell me? You never asked, I said. And you pointed a shotgun at my daughter before I even had the chance. Karen swallowed hard, her lower lip trembling. I didn't know she was... That's the point, I said. Even if she wasn't my daughter, pointing a gun at a child is a crime. Karen's eyes filled with panic now. I wasn't going to shoot her, she protested, voice shaking. I just wanted to scare her. She needed to learn to follow rules. You used fear to control people, I said. That's not leadership. That's abuse. Karen shook her head frantically, her hands trembling so badly that the shotgun wobbled. No, you're twisting everything. I was enforcing HOA rules. I was doing my job. These people never listen. You don't have the right to intimidate anyone, I said. And you definitely don't have the right to point a weapon at a child. Karen took a step back. Then another. Her entire body language changed. No more confidence. No more arrogance. No more power. Only fear. Her voice dropped to a whisper. What's going to happen to me? That's not up to me, I said. But you need to understand something, Karen. I took a step closer, keeping my movements slow and controlled. You crossed a line today. a line that no HOA rule can excuse. But, she stuttered, tears forming in her eyes. I didn't mean. I wasn't trying to hurt her. She's 14, I said. She doesn't deserve fear. She doesn't deserve threats. She deserves safety. Karen's breathing grew rapid. Her voice turned desperate. I wasn't thinking. I thought she was being disrespectful. You thought wrong, I said. Behind me, my daughter clung to my arm tightly. She peeked around my shoulder, eyes terrified, staring at the woman who had just traumatized her. Karen saw her and whispered, I didn't know, That's the problem, I said softly. You don't think before you act. Karen stared at the badge as if it had swallowed all her power, because it had. All the HOA flyers, all the fines, all the shouting, all the rules she used like weapons. None of it mattered anymore. You're the police chief, she whispered again, almost to herself. Yes, I said, and you pointed a shotgun at my daughter. Her knees buckled slightly. She finally understood. Her reign of fear was over. Her false power was gone. Her mask had been ripped off in front of the entire neighborhood. And now, reality was sinking into her like cold water. Karen looked around the street, but the neighbors who once feared her now stood silently, watching. No one defended her. No one spoke up. Not a single person stood beside her. She was alone, truly alone. And she finally knew it. The quiet morning air broke instantly when the sound of police sirens echoed through the neighborhood. The wailing grew louder and louder until 2 patrol cars turned the corner, their lights flashing bright red and blue across every house, every window, every lawn. For the first time, Karen's confidence cracked completely. She stumbled backward as I stepped protectively in front of my daughter. My daughter clung tightly to the back of my shirt, trembling, her breath hiccuping as she tried to calm herself. I kept my arm slightly extended behind me, keeping her shielded without frightening her further. Karen pointed at me with a shaking hand. You can't arrest me, she screamed. I'm the HOA president. I run this place. The HOA doesn't outrank the law, I said, my voice cool and unshaken. And it never did. Karen looked around desperately, hoping someone, anyone, would come to her defense. But the neighbors who once hid under her threats now stood on their porches, arms crossed, eyes wide, watching silently. No one moved toward her. No one spoke up. No one supported her. She was alone. And she knew it. The patrol cars parked sharply, and 2 officers stepped out, Officer Daniels and Officer Ruiz. Both saw my daughter crying behind me. Both saw Karen holding the shotgun with unsteady hands. And both understood the situation immediately. Daniels adjusted his vest and approached with slow, careful steps. He addressed me directly. Chief, is she the suspect? Yes, I said, for threatening a child with a firearm. Karen's eyes went wide with panic. What? No, that's not true, she shouted. I didn't threaten her. I was just trying to teach her a lesson. She was breaking the rules. That's not how lessons work, I said firmly. That's how crimes happen. Ruiz slowly moved to Karen's left while Daniels stayed on her right, forming a safe triangle around her. Both kept calm expressions, but their posture showed they were ready for anything. Ma'am, Daniels said, this is a serious situation. Put the gun down. Karen's hands trembled violently now. The reality of what she had done hit her all at once. Her voice cracked. No. She broke the rules. She was disrespecting me. I was just trying to control her. Karen, I said, it's over. Put the weapon down before this gets worse. Tears slid down her cheeks, leaving wet streaks in her makeup. She looked at the shotgun, then at me, then at the officers closing in slowly. Her arrogance dissolved completely. Now she looked like a terrified person facing consequences for the first time in her life. But I didn't mean, she whispered. I wasn't going to shoot. Ruiz kept his voice steady. Ma'am, we're not asking again. The neighborhood was silent, except for my daughter's soft sobbing. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. Everyone watched, neighbors, behind fences, families on porches, some filming from a distance, others whispering in shock. Karen finally loosened her grip. The shotgun lowered. Her fingers shook. Her voice trembled. I didn't know she was his daughter. That doesn't matter, Daniels said. You can't point guns at anyone. Especially not a child. Karen closed her eyes tightly. And then, defeated, She dropped the shotgun onto the grass. The officers moved instantly. Ruiz kicked the shotgun safely away, while Daniels secured Karen's hands behind her back. She didn't resist. She didn't yell. She didn't fight. She simply sagged, exhausted, humiliated, and powerless. People whispered from the sidewalks. Finally. She scared all our kids. She went too far this time. She deserves to be taken in. Karen looked around through watery eyes as if pleading for someone to defend her. But no one came. No one stepped forward. Her power over them had evaporated the moment she crossed the line. Daniels guided her toward the patrol car as she muttered desperately, "I was just doing my job. I was protecting the neighborhood. I didn't want to hurt anyone." But her words meant nothing now. My daughter clung to my arm, still trembling. I knelt beside her, placing my hands gently on her shoulders. "You're safe," I whispered softly. "You're okay. I'm here." She nodded through tears, leaning into me, still processing the fear she had just survived. Behind us, Ruiz placed the shotgun into an evidence bag. Daniel secured Karen in the back seat of the patrol car. The doors shut with a heavy click that seemed to echo across the entire block. The flashing lights reflected off Karen's face through the window. She wasn't yelling anymore. She wasn't commanding. She wasn't controlling. She was just silent, broken by her own actions, defeated by her own pride. And for the first time ever, she understood that fear and power were not the same. I stood up, carrying my daughter into my arms. She wrapped her arms around my neck tightly, holding on as if letting go would bring the danger back. "You're okay," I whispered again. "No one is ever going to hurt you like that again." As the patrol car drove off, the neighborhood slowly returned to life. People stepped forward, offering soft words of support, relief, and apology for never standing up to Karen sooner. But none of that mattered to me. All that mattered was that my daughter was safe, and the threat was gone. Karen had crossed a line. And now she was finally facing the consequences. The moment Karen was placed inside the patrol car, the neighborhood seemed to release a breath it had been holding for years. The flashing red and blue lights reflected across every window and fence, turning the quiet suburban street into a stage where the truth had finally been exposed. Karen sat in the back seat, her shoulders slumped, her face pale, her arrogance stripped away like a costume she could no longer wear. My daughter held onto my arm tightly as if afraid Karen might break free and rush back toward her. I gently placed my hand over hers, comforting her with steady warmth. Her shaking had slowed, but every so often her breath trembled, reminding me how close she had been to something terrifying. "You're safe now," I told her softly. She nodded, wiping her cheeks with her sleeve. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but at least the fear had faded. The officers began documenting the scene, taking careful photos of the shotgun on the grass, the marks in the lawn where Karen had paced angrily, and the spot where my daughter had been standing when it all happened. Everything had to be recorded. Everything had to be clear. Because this wasn't just a violation of HOA rules. This was a criminal act. Officer Daniels approached me with a respectful nod. "Chief, do you or your daughter need medical attention?" "No," I said gently, looking at her. "She's shaken, but she's okay." Daniels knelt in front of her. "You're very brave," he said softly. My daughter tried to smile, but her lips trembled. "I was really scared," she whispered. "That's okay," Daniels replied kindly. "You did everything right." The neighbors slowly approached, some timidly, others with guilt on their faces. Many had witnessed Karen's controlling behavior for years. Some had argued with her. Some had been too afraid to stand up to her. Now they were looking at my daughter with genuine sympathy. A woman from across the street placed a hand over her heart. "I am so sorry, Chief. I saw her yelling, but I never thought she'd take it this far." A man next to her nodded. "She threatened my kids once. I didn't know what to do. She acted like she owned everything." Another neighbor, an elderly man who usually stayed indoors, stepped closer. "I should have spoken up earlier," he said softly. "She was getting worse. We all saw it. Nobody wanted to be the one she turned on. I didn't blame them. Fear can silence an entire community if no one stands strong first. And Karen had become an expert at using fear like a weapon, long before she ever picked up a shotgun. She won't hurt anyone again," I said simply. My daughter leaned her head against my arm, listening to every word around her. She was still processing everything, her young mind trying to separate what happened from what she feared might have happened. It would take time for her to feel normal again. Across the street, another patrol car arrived, this time with the HOA vice president, a nervous-looking man clutching papers in his hands. He hurried over to us, apologizing before he even reached us. "Chief, I'm so sorry," he said, out of breath. "Karen never had the authority to confront residents like that. We've had problems with her, complaints about her, but no one expects a neighbor to point a gun at a child," I said calmly. He swallowed hard and looked down. "You have my word. She's removed from the HOA immediately, permanently. We'll rebuild trust. I promise." I nodded, but I wasn't interested in HOA politics. I cared only about my daughter. Ruiz approached, closing her notebook. "Chief, we're transporting her to holding now. She'll be processed, charged, and held without bail until the hearing." "Good," I said quietly. Karen looked through the patrol car window as if she wanted to say something. Her face had none of the fire it once carried. No anger, no authority. Only fear, the same fear she had once forced on everyone else. The officers shut the doors, and the patrol car slowly pulled away. The lights faded as it turned the corner, taking Karen with it. My daughter clutched my sleeve. "Is she gone?" she asked softly. "Yes," I said. "She's gone." She breathed out, long and heavy, like she had been holding that breath since the moment Karen raised the gun. I picked up her backpack from the grass and dusted it off. "Let's go inside," I whispered. "You need rest." As we walked toward our front door, the neighbors watched us with expressions of relief, sympathy, and quiet respect. They knew the nightmare was over because someone finally stepped in, someone who had both the authority and the courage to stop Karen. And my daughter, though shaken and fragile at that moment, walked with her head slightly higher. She had gone through something terrifying and survived with strength she didn't know she had. When we reached the doorway, she paused and looked up at me. "Dad, what's going to happen to her?" "She'll face justice," I said. "She'll answer for what she did, just like anyone else would." My daughter nodded, understanding more than her age would suggest. Inside the house, the warmth wrapped around us. The fear finally loosened its grip. My daughter sank onto the couch, hugging a pillow to her chest, letting the relief flow through her. I sat beside her, placing a steady arm around her shoulders. No matter what Karen had believed, the HOA didn't control this home. Fear didn't control this home. And Karen's voice would never again echo through this street like a threat. Because now the truth had been revealed. She hurt the wrong family, she threatened the wrong child, and she underestimated the wrong father. I looked at my daughter and whispered, "You're safe now, and you always will be." The police cars had disappeared down the street, and for the first time since morning, the neighborhood became quiet again. Not the tense, suffocating quiet that came with fear, but a calm, natural silence that felt like fresh air after a storm. I stood on the porch with my daughter wrapped securely in my arms, feeling her breath slowly grow steady. She was exhausted, not just from crying, but from the wave of shock that had crashed over her again and again. She sat beside me on the porch steps, wrapped in a soft blanket. Her cheeks were still slightly red, her eyes puffy, but she was calmer now. She leaned her head on my shoulder and didn't speak for a long time. I didn't rush her. She needed space to feel everything without fear. After a while, she whispered, "Dad, why does she hate me?" Her voice was quiet, but the question held weight. The kind of weight children shouldn't have to carry. I brushed a few strands of hair from her face and spoke gently. "She doesn't hate you," I said. "She hates losing control." My daughter blinked as she processed the words. She wasn't old enough to understand the deep psychological problem behind Karen's behavior, but she understood the feeling of someone wanting power over her. And she understood that Karen had tried to use fear, not reason. "But why does she try to control everything?" she asked softly. "Some people think rules make them powerful," I said. "When others don't follow those rules, even harmless ones, they feel threatened." Karen was so used to controlling everyone that she didn't know how to stop. My daughter nodded slowly, leaning deeper into my side. The sun was setting, painting the sky with soft pink and orange streaks. The light spread across the houses, turning every window warm and golden. It was the kind of sunset you could stare at for hours, a reminder that even after the worst storms, the world finds a way to be beautiful again. "Do you think she'll come back?" my daughter said quietly. I shook my head. "No, she'll face her consequences, and the law will make sure she doesn't hurt anyone again. She let out a long breath, as if she had been holding that fear tightly inside her. She usually wasn't a child who asked many questions, but tonight she needed answers. She needed reassurance that the danger truly was gone. "Did I do something wrong?" she whispered. My heart ached at the question. I turned toward her and held her face gently in my hands. "No," I said firmly. "You didn't do anything wrong. You were just being yourself, waiting for school, existing peacefully. Karen made choices, wrong choices. And that's on her, not you." Her eyes filled with fresh tears, but this time they weren't from fear. They were from release, from finally understanding she wasn't to blame. She wrapped her arms around me, hugging me tightly. "I was so scared, Dad." "I know," I whispered, holding her close. "But you're safe now, and you will always be safe with me." We stayed like that for several minutes. Gradually, the tension drained from her small body, replaced by the comfort of being protected, of knowing she wasn't alone. The neighbors who had seen the chaos came out again, but now their expressions were different. Soft, sympathetic, relieved. Some of them waved gently, showing their support from afar. They were afraid to intervene earlier, but now they felt safer, knowing Karen was gone and wouldn't terrorize anyone again. Mrs. Langley from next door stood near the edge of her lawn and said quietly, "Your daughter is so strong. And you handled everything with such calm, Chief. Thank you." I nodded politely, not wanting to draw attention. This moment wasn't about the neighborhood. It was about my daughter feeling whole again. As the last of the sunlight faded behind the rooftops, my daughter leaned her head back against my shoulder. "Dad, you won't ever let anything happen to me, right?" "Never," I said, kissing her forehead. "No matter who threatens you, no matter where you are, I will always protect you." She gave a small smile, tired but real. "I know, Dad." We sat there until the sky turned dark and the first stars appeared above us. The warm breeze brushed through the trees, carrying away the last remnants of fear that lingered in the air. For the first time in a long while, the neighborhood felt peaceful, truly peaceful. Inside the house, the lamps glowed softly, illuminating the living room where my daughter curled up on the couch under her favorite blanket. I brought her a warm cup of milk, and she held it with both hands, letting the warmth ease the last tremble in her fingers. "Dad?" she asked again quietly. "Yes? Do you think everyone will be safe now?" "Yes," I said confidently, "because Karen crossed a line today, and the law doesn't ignore lines like that." She nodded, satisfied, and leaned back into the cushions. As I watched her drift into calmness again, one truth echoed deeply inside me, a truth that defined everything that had happened. Karen made the biggest mistake of her life the moment she raised a shotgun at a child, especially a police chief's child. Justice had arrived. Peace had returned. And no matter what challenges came in the future, my daughter would never face them alone.